So Brett Kavanaugh is President Trump's pick to replace Anthony Kennedy. There apparently was a little bit of a secret deal between Trump and Kennedy in order to have him make that pick. Kavanaugh, of course, had clerked for Justice Kennedy, and he wanted to make sure that his legacy was secure. Well, his legacy, of course, would probably include now undoing a lot of the things that Kennedy had actually been the swing vote on. That, of course, if Kavanaugh gets confirmed. Now, a couple of the other points that I want to talk about when it concerns Kavanaugh and his positions on things is privacy rights and net neutrality. So let's start with net neutrality here. President Trump's Supreme Court nominee had argued last year that net neutrality violates the First Amendment rights of corporations, of specifically ISPs. Now, it doesn't just, according to him, violate the First Amendment, but it prevents them from exercising editorial control over the internet, over content. Wow. Now, Kavanaugh's dissent had said that the net neutrality rule is unlawful and must be vacated, again, because it doesn't allow ISPs to control what flows over their internet transmission lines. He said, the rule transforms the internet by imposing a common carrier obligations on internet service providers and thereby prohibiting internet service providers from exercising editorial control over the content they transmit to consumers. This was during one of the cases that he had seen when he was in the D.C. Circuit Court. So when he was serving on the court upheld net neutrality protections under Tom Wheeler. But every time it came up, Kavanaugh was one of the lone dissenting voices. Because it's like, those corporations, they don't have enough speech rights. We got to protect their First Amendment rights. Well, who cares about the people? No. We want the ISPs to have editorial control over what people see. But wait a minute, a lot of what people see on the internet is what people create. So that's their expression. That's their First Amendment rights. So you want to give First Amendment rights to corporations to allow them to control speech. And then, of course, you're denying the creators of a lot of these things, websites on the internet, you can deny them free speech. Wow. Okay, then. Now, not only that, by the way, this entire thing is it is absolutely opposed to what the internet is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a free and open and fair platform. Justice Kavanaugh doesn't agree. He thinks it actually should be more like cable television. In fact, he said internet service providers may not necessarily generate much content on their own. They don't generate any content on their own. They're companies that basically just control the infrastructure, the public infrastructure, and they basically charge you fees to be able to use that infrastructure. That, of course, was public. If anything, what we should have is we should get rid of the ISPs, these ISP companies, and nationalize the internet. Again, it was created by us. It's not like these internet service providers are actually doing any sort of thing to make it go faster. In fact, no, they don't want the internet to be faster unless they're able to make some sort of money on it. So, but anyway, no, Kavanaugh says they should be less like common carriers and more like cable companies and sell you more like cable packages. Now, those packages would be basically you pay a certain amount of money to access certain websites. Whoa, great. Whoa, that sounds fantastic, says everybody who has ever cut cable. Now, he said, quote, just as cable operators decide what content they will transmit, internet service providers should be able to decide what content they will transmit. Deciding whether and how to transmit ESPN and deciding whether and how to transmit ESPN.com are not meaningfully different for First Amendment purposes. Well, this is going back to how he is an originalist, right? So he's like, well, you take the original definition of the Constitution. But you don't understand, when the Constitution was written, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have machine guns either. So there are things that you need to interpret for that apply for living in the 21st century as opposed to the 18th century. See, that's one of the biggest problems, I think, of judicial originalism, right? Is that you have to have, like, since you have an evolving society, you do have to have a document that grows along with that. And he doesn't believe in that. But anyway, what his decisions would do is basically kill the internet as it exists and turn it into basically a cable package. Now, Kavanaugh would also like to allow ISPs to charge websites fees to allow people to access them, which again, of course, is in opposition to the entire idea of the internet, especially a fair, free, and open internet. So shows like mine, for example, wouldn't exist. Just imagine, right, under the Kavanaugh definition, you would have internet service providers that would be able to block content that they don't agree with. So if you ever criticize your ISP overlords and say, well, I think we should nationalize internet, or we should have municipal internet here because I feel like I'm getting screwed by my cable company. Well, they would not allow that. They would block your content. They would have control over the editorial control over any of the content that flows through their transmission lines. So shows like mine wouldn't exist. We would be blocked. We would be choked out of, existence. That's the kind of internet that Brett Kavanaugh believes that we should have. Now, he's not just in favor of course, murdering the internet. He's also in favor of denying people privacy rights and invading on people's privacy. In fact, in 2015, Kavanaugh was part of a unanimous decision when the D.C. Circuit denied a petition to rehear a challenge to the NSA's bulk collection of telephone metadata. Now, that was, of course, revealed by Edward Snowden. Now, Kavanaugh was the only judge to issue a written statement which said that the government collection of telephone metadata from a third party, such as a telecommunications service provider, is not considered a search under the Fourth Amendment. So they said even if this form of surveillance constituted a search, it wouldn't be an unreasonable search, and therefore it would be legal. Well, wait a minute. He's arguing that basically the government vacuuming up everybody's metadata is not unreasonable. No, it's incredibly unreasonable. Look, the government just shouldn't be, and this is what they're doing. They're casting a gigantic wide net of all American citizens, basically taking that data to use for God knows what. Oh, but it's to stop terrorists. Well, we'll get to how many terrorists they stop later on. But he bases this on, quote, the Fourth Amendment allows governmental searches and seizures without individualized suspicion when the government demonstrates a sufficient special need. That is, a need beyond the normal need for law enforcement that outweighs the intrusion on individual liberty. So he says, well, look, it's fine. It's not actually a violation of the Fourth Amendment because we need the government to go and vacuum up all our metadata. Well, what need is there? He said the government's program for bulk collection of telephony metadata serves as a critically important special need, preventing terrorist attacks on the United States. In my view, that critical national security need outweighs the impact of privacy occasioned by this program. So that was a decision back in 2015, saying, no, we should absolutely spy on Americans. We should continue to collect their metadata and do nothing with it. We're going to sit on it. Well, why do I say that? because there have been no terrorist attacks that were stopped by bulk collection. That same year that they made this decision, there was a report that came out by a White House review panel. And they recommended that the United States end the practice of bulk collection. In fact, they say that the panel had made that recommendation after concluding that the program was not essential in preventing attacks. So they looked into it and they said, we didn't find anything. There's no evidence that this program has led to any arrests of potential terrorists or stopped any sort of attacks on American soil. Hasn't stopped anything. All we're doing is we're taking people's data. And we're basically intruding on everyone's privacy. That panel looked into it. They said it. And yet Kavanaugh's like, no, we must have big government go in and spy on American citizens. And by the way, I believe in freedom. You don't believe in freedom. Freedom for the corporations to be able to control editorial content on the internet. Yes. Oh, we're going to give all the freedom we can to the corporations. But when it comes to your personal data, your freedom of privacy, oh, we don't give a damn about that. That's who Brett Kavanaugh is. He's pro-corporate control over the internet and pro-spying in on Americans. That is not freedom. He is not in favor of freedom. He's a terrible choice for the Supreme Court. And look, if any Democrat even dares to try to support him, I think there needs to be hell to pay when it comes to elections. This man should not be on the Supreme Court. He has disastrous opinions. He's an extremist. He's a political hack. And he should not be able to sit on that court. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.